My name is Allison Blake, and I'm the Executive Director of the Abilene Area Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening and allowing the Chamber to fulfill part of its mission, which is to keep our community members up to date on legislative issues and local government issues and the like. I'd like to thank our candidates for attending this evening and sharing their views with us, and our moderator this evening, Mr. Dennis Weiss of Eagle Communications. I'd also like to thank the Eisenhower staff for allowing us to hold this event in their beautiful facility and doing all the setup and all that for us. So we really appreciate their partnership in this. We'd also like to mention that Eagle Communications is recording this event, and it will air on Saturday, and there will be links on their website as well. So you can watch it on either Channel 2 or on the web. If you have friends and family that weren't able to attend, please let them know that. Just a couple of quick rules. We do encourage the crowd to hold their applause until the completion of the candidate's response. There won't be any questions from the audience during the event. The questions were submitted ahead of time and will be read by the moderator, but you're welcome to stay after and visit with the candidates after the forum's completed. Each candidate will be allowed a 1-minute introduction, and then they'll have a 2-minute initial response and then 1 minute for a follow-up response. As the speaker's time is kind of winding down, I'll hold up a yellow card to indicate that they have 15 seconds left, and when those 15 seconds are up, I'll hold up a red card to remind them to go ahead and wrap up their sentence and continuing on. We'll begin with the Dickinson County Memorial Hospital Board candidates, and then we'll go on to the school board candidates and then the city commission candidates. Again, thank you all for coming, and with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Weiss.
Thank you. I'll point out to the folks in front of the microphones that you'll have to make sure your voice is heard. So somebody, Tim Horan's going to tell us if you can hear people, okay? Yep, you're sitting right in front. So I think Steve Schwarting might have an issue. So you fellas, feel free to do this. Everybody looking? Okay. They move, okay? All right. Very good. I think I'll let you introduce yourself because I'm just going to go down the line with the first question. So I see Dr. Biggs looking at me. He's looked at me a lot like that. I worry about that. So Dr. Biggs, do you have a specific concern that led you to run for the hospital board?
Actually, I ran the year or so after I retired and wanted to give back something to the community, and I figured the hospital and doctors and was something I knew about and could possibly help with the board. And I've enjoyed my 4 years on the board and look forward to serving another 4 years.
Mildred Fink.
Yes. I don't have any specific concerns beyond the fact that I like to keep women on the board. I served at one time when I was the only woman on the board, and I was very, very glad when another one did come on the board just to represent the women's interests. I also always like to keep someone from Chapman area and the rural area, both of which I am from Chapman, and I live at the edge of Chapman, and I like to keep kind of front and center that Chapman exists over there, and we would like to keep our hospital strong here. And that's my mostly the reason that I am running for the board is because I do believe in this hospital. I want it to stay open. I want it to stay healthy, financially stable, and be a good place for Abilene area people to come to get their health care.
John Holtgren, same question.
Okay, I'm much like Dr. Biggs. You know, my interest in coming on the board was giving back to the community. I spent 8 years on the school board in doing that and got off several years ago. And I've been in healthcare for 35 years, and again, I felt like it's something that I knew something about. and thought this would be a good way to give back to the community that I lived in. I too am very concerned about, as most of you have heard or know, that healthcare in the country as well as in the state of Kansas in rural areas is really a difficult thing to maintain, and I think that we have a good facility, and I want to certainly do whatever I can to maintain that. So,
Steve Schwarting.
Hi, I'm Steve Schwarting. I've been on the board off and on for probably 20 years. I continue to serve on the board because I believe in the hospital. I believe in the facility that it is. It's really a solid critical access hospital in Kansas, and we strive to meet the needs of the community. And so I'd like to bring whatever input I can to the board and keep it going in the right direction.
Okay, so now that nobody seized up during the first question, how would you like a minute to introduce yourself?
Go ahead.
You can start, Dr. Biggs.
How would you like what?
To introduce yourself. You're supposed to get a minute to do that, but I thought I'd get you talking first.
I'm Dennis Biggs. I was a practicing family physician here for 37 years, retired almost 6 years ago. Raised a family here, think of Abilene as our home, and plan to stay here for a while. My tour director willing.
Mildred?
My mom named me Mildred, as you can see. Most people call me Millie Fink. I do live at the edge of Chapman. I have 6 children. I have 17 grandkids and 3 great-grandkids. That's about it. Been married 55, 6 or 7 years. They go quickly, to my husband, George. So that's pretty much it.
John?
okay, John Holtgren. I'm currently the MS Director and Health Department Director for Dickinson County. Been here for going on 23 years. We reside south of Chapman, east of Enterprise. We recently, in the last couple of years, became officially empty nesters, me and my wife. I have 3 grown boys, and that's what I can say.
Mr. Schwarting?
Hi, I'm Steve Schwarting. I'm originally from Wabunsee County and still have a little bit of dirt under my fingernails. I've been harvesting milo today, and I have a load to take to the elevator when I'm through here. We've been in town since '77. That's 42 years now. My wife's from Tucson, but she loves the small town atmosphere and the caring nature of Kansas people. We have 4 children, 10 grandchildren that we love dearly and spend as much time with them as we can.
Okay, Mildred, I'm going to start with you on the second question.
Okay.
What issues would you like for the hospital to address in the immediate future?
Well, I think the one that's been most in the papers lately and most on our minds as a board is the daycare center. And if I had a solution for that, I'll guarantee you we would have had that taken care of already. So, but I know that affects families. It affects more than just the children who are there. It affects their families and grandparents and so on down the line. How we're going to fix that yet, I can't really say. I don't know if it's going to take more money. I know it's going to take trained help. We'll just see how it goes. But right now, that's one of my primary concerns.
Okay. John?
One of the things I would like to see that the hospital, they do a pretty good job, but I would like to see that continue and expand upon, and is the aspect of community health and looking at ways to improve the community's health as a whole. And whether that be, reaching out to various partners that partner with the hospital or have a hand in health of the community, and working together with those partners and strengthening healthcare as a whole for the county and for the people that Memorial Health System provides care for. And I think that is kind of the way that healthcare is going, as we see it moving more away from the acute, everybody just considering the hospital and looking at ways that can be branched out into community health and making sure that people are getting the right care in the community as a whole.
Steve?
I think the one issue that I continue to work hard with our administrative staff and stuff is to try to get the hospital to be consistently in the black. There are a tremendous number of factors. It's so complicated how reimbursement comes, the rules, the regulations, the programs this year, how it's changed next year, who's reviewing us a time after that. We've been really close this year in the black, but had a program that we thought was going to generate a significant amount of income for us that fell apart. And so we're making up for that in our budget, but not in our services and stuff. And I think we're headed in the right direction. We do add services as we feel the need in the community and as we can afford it, and kind of pick and choose what we do. And I think we offer tremendous services for a small rural health district. It's a hospital district in Kansas.
Thank you. Dr. Biggs?
Well, I share Millie's concern about the daycare center, the Learn and Grow. And of course, the biggest problem we have is not so much money, but getting qualified staff, and that has to do with the state of Kansas has rules that you have to have a trained teacher who has a year's worth of experience. For example, I was talking to my wife, and she, with all her child and child care qualifications, she would not qualify to be a lead person in one of the rooms. There has to be a lead person in every room, and that is the biggest problem the hospital has as far as keeping that daycare center opening, functional, and viable. Jenny has done a wonderful job filling in, doing things. She's been cooking and everything else up there to try and keep it going, but we haven't solved the jumping through the hoops of the Kansas rules and regulations as far as who can be a team leader in that.
Anybody want a minute rebuttal on that topic? Okay, John, you're up next on the next question. What are your thoughts about Memorial Health System's standard of care?
You know, standard of care is derived by making sure that everybody that goes through anything that has to deal with Memorial Health System receives the same adequate care that anybody else that come in that facility would expect to receive in the same situation. And I think overall, I think that the standard of care that I've experienced personally and that I experience on a pretty regular basis is that, you know, we are very lucky in Abilene to have a health system like Memorial Health System. They do an excellent job with the patients that I have seen, and the experiences I've had with Memorial Health System is excellent.
Thank you. Steve?
Ask a question again.
Sure. What are your thoughts about Memorial Health System's standard of care?
Of course, standard of care is a medical jargon type of a comment, but what I can say is that since our new administrator's been here, we've focused a lot on customer service, getting to know our patients, treating them like individuals and humans and stuff, and having a smile on our faces when we come in contact with them, rather than seeming harried and they're a bother to us and stuff. That's what I'd like to see. In the years that I practiced medicine here, patients always responded to personal care and personal interaction and stuff. And I think as a facility that we have that as our highest goal.
Dr. Biggs?
When you say standard of care, it brings up the one job that I have in Topeka with CAMCO, which is a medical malpractice insurance company, and standard of care is the care that would be expected if you are a treating physician or treating a patient who's being treated anywhere in Kansas. That doesn't really fit because our standard of care at Memorial Hospital, I think, has been way above average for many, many years. I really like Dr. Schwarting's answer, and I think that the standard of care in our community hospital starts with the nurses, the physicians, the physician extenders, even the food service, the ambulance service, everybody treating people like human beings and patients, and I think we do.
Millie?
Well, I think as with anything, there's always an opportunity to improve. And that's something that is being looked at all of the time. I mean, we not only as a board look at those statistics pretty much every month, but whenever a concern comes to us and we share that back, we expect, and we usually always actually get some result so that people can come into the hospital and feel like it's home away from home. I think of an incident a few years ago when I had a medical emergency in the middle of the night, and I was doctoring in Junction City because my doctor had moved to Junction City. And in the middle of the night, my husband had to get me to the hospital, and he brought me to Abilene. And it was just like, you know, my head was in Abilene, even though my doctor and my hospital were in Junction City, and I had been treated in Salina. And so that's really what brought me back to Abilene. I think at some point I knew in my head and in my heart that I was going to get the best care, the most personal care, and the best medical care that I could get in Abilene. And so that's one of the things that brought me back to Abilene to be treated. And I think I see that every day. When I go into the hospital, I see a lot of smiling faces. I see people who are interacting with each other. And when I come here to the doctor, I feel as though the care is very personally directed to me. And not just because I'm on the board, but because that's how people are treating patients now. But as I say, we have always room for improvement. We look at that all the time. And our patient satisfaction scores are high. And so, you know, we think we're doing some things right.
Harold, I'm compelled to ask, would you like us to cut that up into a commercial? It would work really well. Okay.
You owe me.
Steve, you have the first take on this question. What is your position on health care as a right, not a privilege?
Throughout the decades I was in practice in the medical school, and even before, I've always felt that health care was something that everybody should be able to expect. And so I'm more on the side that it's a right, not a privilege. And the thing that I then compare it to societies, advanced societies around the world, and I see that our healthcare system costs at least twice as much as any of the European countries. The survival rates in the United States lower. The incidence of child or infant mortality is higher than those countries, and it costs so much in here in our country that I think as hospital and as healthcare providers, we're stuck at the mercy of large insurance companies, large drug companies that have, and large hospital systems that have a huge amount of influence in Congress, and the rules get passed and they come down to us, and we have to live by it. And we do a good job of living by it, but I think it could be a whole lot different if we accepted that people have this right for care.
Thank you. Dr. Biggs.
I believe that health care is definitely a right that everyone should have. The problem that I see and that the United States and also locally we're going to have to face is we can't afford everything we can do. And I don't want to be the one to ration that care and say, well, you get an MRI and you don't. But somewhere along the line, there's going to have to be some common sense rationing, if you will, so that the end of life care is not so terribly, terribly expensive. And those are tough ethical problems, and I'm not going to be here to solve them, and I think it's going to be a tough problem we're all going to have to face.
Millie?
I also believe that healthcare should be a right and not a privilege. It is a privilege now if you have health insurance, if you have money, then you're pretty much entitled to. I have really good insurance. I don't have any money, but I have good insurance. The insurance company takes most of my money. But I do have good insurance, and I feel very privileged that we are able to pay for it and that we do have good insurance. In my own family, I've seen people die from lack of medical care because they did not have insurance. Working in social services for 25 years, I saw the same thing over and over and over, that if you don't have a medical card, if you don't have any insurance, and you don't have a way to pay for it, you're going to die. And that's a terrible, terrible way to do business when we have so much expertise in the healthcare business. So yes, I absolutely believe that it should be a right, not a privilege.
Thank you. John?
I'm going to have to agree with all of them. I think that it is a right that we have good, adequate health care for everyone. You know, again, like Dr. Biggs said, it's going to be difficult in figuring out, you know, rationing and who gets what, and because there are some things to work through with it. And but again, I think that it's something that needs to be done. I think that the cost of insurance, the cost of medications and pharmaceuticals is out of control and put it out of reach for a lot of people. A lot of people's health care suffers as a result of that. And we've got to come up with a way to be able to make it affordable for everyone. So,
Thank you. Dr. Biggs, we're back to you for another question. What priorities do you see for Memorial Health System in the next 5 years?
I think the biggest priority that's going to be, that we're going to continue to be faced with is finances, having creative ways to serve and be able to get those finances to work. The government can change a rule that affects us tremendously and have to constantly be on balance to be able to two-step through all of those changes. So I think the finances are going to continually be a big concern. I've seen huge improvement in the culture of the hospital over the last several years, and that the nurses are happier, the doctors I think are happier, the employees in general are happier, and but we don't want to take the status quo and not continue to work on keeping the culture. If all of those people are happy and functioning well, the patients are going to be well satisfied and happy.
Thank you. Millie?
I think staying in the black is a big priority. I mean, we hate to keep saying that healthcare, the hospital, is a business, but it is. And if we don't stay, at least even with the board, then we don't hire help, we don't buy equipment, and we begin to fail. And we've seen that around us in several hospitals where they've either had to be taken over by someone else, declared bankruptcy, or have just closed their doors. Now, we're in good shape right now, and we have to keep an eye on that every single month as we get the reports from the CFO and Harold. We have to just keep watching that and making sure that the next piece of equipment is going to pay out. In other words, what we ask is that if we buy this piece of equipment, tell us how many months, years it will be as you make the charges, as patients are using it, for this piece of equipment to pay out. Sometimes it's practically obsolete before we get it paid for, but there are just a lot of decisions that have to be made in finances if we're going to continue to keep the door open. And so that's a really important thing, is staying in the black, providing good patient care so that we keep the patients coming in the door, and keeping the doctors, the nurses, at least at some level of pay where we're competitive with others around us so that we can keep those people working for us.
Thank you. John?
I agree that finances is one of the huge topics. Kansas has more critical access hospitals than any state in the nation, and as all of you read and some of you know, that critical access hospitals are having a difficult time. There's been several in the state of Kansas just closed in the last couple of years. So maintaining finances, maintaining services is going to be a constant struggle. Another, staffing shortages. There's a huge shortage of practitioners. There's a shortage of nurses that is seen around the state, and especially in the last couple of years. There's some organizations that are working to change that, but it becomes pretty hard for hospitals to have to hire out for registry nurses and registry staff to fill those open positions, and becomes very expensive to do that. So, you know, the shortage of practitioners and nurses is going to be prime in helping the bottom line of hospitals, and that's going to be a major concern.
Steve?
Well, the biggest challenge that I see over the next 5 years is to continue our expanding medical staff. You may not know it, but we've had 2 physicians that knocked on our door and said, can we come here and practice, rather than just as a fact of recruiting them and offering all kinds of incentives. That has created an environment where the shortage of physicians in our hospital has been solved, but we can still have room for another position or 2. That's different than a lot of rural Kansas communities that struggle to have a physician, or maybe even struggle to have a nurse practitioner or a PA to offer them services. I agree that finances are going to be a big problem, but we're aware of that. The board that sits right now has been to several meetings and is aware of the crises in small hospitals across the country, how they can remain independent, how they have to, many of them are affiliating with larger systems because it's economically more feasible and stuff. And we're facing that head on and keeping that in mind. We don't have any plans to do that right now. We've said several times, no, we don't want to do it. But if things change, and who knows what might change, then we want to be ready to affiliate with somebody that would continue to provide the services that we need here in Abilene. The staffing is just a headache as far as trying to recruit good staff, nurses, radiologists, red techs, nurse practitioners, all the way down the line, and then keeping them happy and paying them adequately so they don't go to another facility. I think we're doing a good job of that right now. We'd like to continue to see that. Just for an example of what we've accomplished, temporary providers were a problem. If somebody doesn't show up today, you can call for a temp agency and they'll send you a nurse, but it costs about twice as much as a regular a nurse. We had problems with paying large amounts for temporary services in the nursing home, so we raised our salaries for our CNAs and nurses assistants down there, and have solved the temporary problem and have long-term providers.
Thank you.
That was a yellow card.
Thank you. Proper response, though. Well done. Millie, you get to start off the last question.
Okay.
What can be done to continue to attract doctors who will remain in the community long term?
Well, I think that quality of life has always been an issue, but especially in the last few years. I mean, doctors don't come and expect to be on call 24 hours a day. So what they want is good working conditions, good working hours. Their families are, of course, wanting to be in a town, and I think Abilene and Abilene area can certainly contribute to this. They want to be in a town where there's good housing, good schools, good churches, the other amenities that families all want. And so it's all kind of one package that as long as the community and the hospital are working together, and people, doctors, nurses, et cetera, are wanting to come here because we have a good reputation and because we're viable, I think that will continue to attract doctors and nurses to come to work here.
Thank you, Millie. John?
You know, I think that, like Millie said, the community is what makes this a desirable place. You've got to have good schools. You've got to have good businesses, good working facilities with the hospital. You know, physicians, new physicians aren't like they used to be that were, you know, willing to be in clinic all day and then be on call in the ER at night. And so they're looking for, you know, quality facilities. They're looking for good practices within the community in which to practice medicine, and they're looking at the staff that are currently in the facility that they work with, that are receptive to working with them. So I think those are all things that physicians look for to come to a community and in essence to stay in a community.
Steve?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the requirements for a good hospital anymore includes the physicians, and like I said earlier, we've been fortunate to have medical staff of physicians that has helped recruit and bring in new practitioners, new younger practitioners and stuff. But I think it's just as important to keep a high quality of our physician standards, the PAs and the nurse practitioners, and appreciate the position that they have in the hospital, because they do so much of the groundwork. When I showed up at the emergency room this winter, in the middle of the afternoon, there were nurse practitioners that took care of me and got me to the right place in a short period of time. We extend that safety net with a electronic system that allows us to, has a camera on you, and it goes to a place in South Dakota where there's always a physician that's given us a second opinion on what should be done and where it should be done and stuff. And I think that's part of the progressiveness of the hospital, recognizing that there are people beyond here that can give us advice and stuff, and they're standing ready to do that all the time. Do I get a yellow card?
We'll give you one if you want. Go ahead and show it to him. He kind of liked it.
Didn't get a red, at least.
Didn't get a red one.
Dr. Biggs, you get to finish this off.
Well, I certainly think it is the entire package. The physicians that are here have been instrumental in getting some of the new docs that we have to come. Those folks are also going to be instrumental in bringing new people. And we're kind of at the place where we're also can be a little more picky, and we can look for folks who we can see are going to fit into Abilene Memorial, and how they're going to work. So I think we're setting in a good position as far as physicians go. We still look for getting a surgeon. Dr. Narciso here for many, many years and worked wonderfully. It takes a unique surgeon to come practice by himself in a small town, and we can't support two. We've looked into getting, and we do have some Salina and some Manhattan surgeons coming over, and we're hoping to increase that. But I think this community is going to mainly rely on family physicians over the years. That's just what fits best. And I think we're in a good position to recruit one or two more.
Okay, that's the last round of questions I have on my sheet. I have a few more in my brain, but they won't let me do that. So what I'm going to do, you have a 2-minute closing statement. We'll start at the other end of the table. And you have 2 minutes to...
2 minutes?
Yes. Tell us what you think.
In summary, what I'd like to say is I've enjoyed being on the board, being in the position with the board activities of going to the meetings, finding out what other hospitals are doing around the nation, and then helping choose the best kinds of ways that we can keep up with current administrative tools. We have a great board. There's 5 of us that appreciate and like each other, and nobody's afraid to voice an opinion that's against the majority and stuff, and I'd like to see that continue. So I'd like to be a part of that. I'd like to continue to be on the board, to be a part of having the hospital continue to be as good as it can be. And it's great already, but we need to work at it all the time.
Thank you, Steve. John?
Like I've stated earlier, I think the hospital here in Abilene is an excellent facility. It's something that I would like to see continue. I would like to have the opportunity to help that happen and to keep up and making sure that, you know, the finances are there and that this does remain a viable community access hospital for this part of the state. And again, I think it's excellent in what it provides at this point, but I think that you certainly got to be open to watching what healthcare as a whole does and keeping up with the challenges that provides.
Thank you, John. Millie?
I think that it's a big commitment to be on this board. It's a time commitment also. For instance, this week, 4 days, some part of 4 days will be devoted to hospital business. So if you don't have it in your heart and in your mind to make that kind of commitment to being on the board, then you probably, and I have that time. And I've been doing this for a number of years. I'm not quite sure how many. When I was working full-time, I couldn't donate as much time, volunteer as much time toward the board as what I can now. Excuse me. But I've enjoyed being on the board. I do enjoy the board we have now. We govern by consensus, meaning that we agree to disagree. If you don't like the way the vote went, at least you will consent to go with the program, do what the board has decided. So that's been a nice board to work with, an easy board to work with, although, as I say, we have disagreements and we talk it out, but we do get things done. So I've appreciated being on the board, I've appreciated the administration, and would like to serve yet one more term, or two.
I also enjoyed being on the board. I can remember my partner, who unfortunately left us last year, saying, "You're really going to run for the board, but you hate meetings." And I do. But I honestly enjoy and look forward to our board meetings each month. And it's been a great group to work with. It's been a great working with the executive staff. And we do get along. And yeah, you sat across the table, so
We do.
I would enjoy being on the board for another 4 years.
Thank you all for your time, and on behalf of the community, I would like to say thank you for the prior service that you've all given in our healthcare system. We're blessed in Abilene to have the hospital that we do, the healthcare that we do. We appreciate you standing for office. Give them a hand.
Thank you.
Up there to some of you, I think. So I'm going to start with Rob Keener. Tell them who you are. You have a couple of minutes.
My name's Robert Keener. I've been in Abilene for a little over 14 years now. I'm originally from Derby. I've got 3 kids in school here in Abilene, a junior, a 7th grader, and a 5th grader. I'm a member of the Kansas Highway Patrol, been there for 20 years. And I was also in the Army National Guard and the United States Marine Corps. That's a little bit about me.
Okay.
Amy Meisenberg.
My name's Amy Meisenberg. I work in public health emergency preparedness. I have a current Kansas nursing license, and I just graduated K-State this past August with my bachelor's degree in human development and family services. I have 3 children, 2 in college, 1's a senior. I'm married to David. He's sitting in the back. He's a teacher in Salina. And I've been with Kids in Crisis for the past 6 years. I've been the president of the board of Kids in Crisis for the past 2 years. And I guess I feel like my kids are growing up, and so it's my time. So I'm ready to get out and explore and see how I can help.
Veronica Murray.
I'm Veronica Murray. I've lived in Abilene off and on. We've been transferred a few times, but since 2002, same year I married my husband, who works for Union Pacific out of Salina. Together we have one daughter, Madeline, who's 13 years old, and of course attends school here in Abilene. I currently work for the Dickinson County Economic Development Office, and I volunteer on several boards and organizations, so I'm happy to be here.
Okay. Rob, I'm going to start with you on question 1.
Okay.
What motivated you to run for the Abilene School Board?
What motivated me, like I said, I spent my entire adult life in service, and I think this is another way to serve the public. With my 3 kids in school, I'm interested in what's going on with them and how things are for them, and also just the community itself, that we're providing the best we can to our kids at all levels. I'm the type of person that if I see an opportunity I can help out and maybe make things a little bit better or give my opinion, I like to do that, and I believe this is my chance to step up and do something for the community we live in.
Thank you, Rob. Amy.
Okay. What motivated me is I grew up in Abilene, and I had a wonderful experience in the school system, as did my husband. My kids have had wonderful experiences. Then I get involved with kids in crisis, and I see kids that are having some challenges. And if there's any way I can possibly help, and I think we have a great school system, but I think there are some needs that maybe teachers aren't even aware of. And so I really want to be of service and get every child's needs met in any way possible.
Thank you. Veronica.
Well, I think we've heard it twice now, so third time's a charm. Service. It seems like several years, every few years, you look at the school board and you see what they're doing and you think, gosh, they've got a tough job ahead of them. And eventually I started to feel like I should share some of that burden. You're right, the schools are doing a great job. I think that our school system in particular is very unique. One of the first schools, maybe the first school in Kansas or school district to have iPads. Their multi-tiered approach to serving children academically and through social emotional is really impressive to me. And I thought, you know, I have a child in the district, and I just felt like it was my duty. I had the opportunity. I have the support from my family, and so that's why I stepped up.
Thank you. Amy, I'm going to give you the next question first.
Okay.
Could you respond to the question, does everyone need to be educated to the best of their ability, and what does that mean?
Yes, everyone needs to be educated to the best of their ability. And I think part of what that means is they need personal learning environments, meaning the teachers and educators need to meet the needs of the individual students. I actually talked to some friends of mine about this question that are administrators, and they said, like, if you have a classroom of 3rd graders, some of them may be ready to do 4th grade work by October. You need to meet those child's needs, and there's computer programs that do that. So actually the children are working on computers, and once you pass 3rd grade level, you move right into 4th grade. Some kids are not ready to do that, but we need to meet the kids' needs where they are. When I was in school, everyone memorized everything. It was all the same. You know, it was all the same. There wasn't individual needs met, and that's where we are today. We have to have personalized education environments, personalized learning environments to be successful.
Thank you. Veronica.
In some ways that may be true, that there's always going to be a gap, where there's always going to be kids that we miss, but I believe that the Abilene schools have a tiered system of support, meaning that there's a certain level that every child is approached with. Kids aren't cutting the mustard with that approach, then they go to the 2nd tier. Those children have a different kind of approach. There's a smaller tier on the top, it's just like a pyramid, and there's a small group of children that need very focused and localized approaches, and so they get extra attention, extra help, whether it's for social emotional needs or educational needs. And I'm gonna feel like I got off on a tangent here, but I feel like every child obviously needs the same ability to learn. They all need the same amount of support. The support is going to be different for each student, and there's always a gap that you can cover. There's always improvements that can be made, but as a district as a whole, I feel like we're doing a decent job at that.
Thank you. Rob?
I agree. I think every child needs to learn to the best of their abilities, to their maximum effort. And I think not only recognizing what the kids' levels are, but what challenges the kids too. I'm a big believer in, kind of like you said, not everything being the same or doing everything to a standard per se, but what's the best we can get out of people? What are the things that challenge them? You know, like sort of in a sense of rewards, but not necessarily a reward, but the reward being the accomplishment of having the challenge in front of the kids, so they feel good about what they accomplished, not so much, you know, I checked the box today of what's the same and what everybody's got to do in the minimum standard, but getting done and challenging myself, you know, I think that feels better to them, and I think everybody likes that when they get a challenge in front of them and they meet it and they overcome it. I think that feels good, and I think that's something we need to try to do too, is challenge our kids to be as good as they can be, not just learn at the level they need to or where they're at, but get them to where they can be.
Thank you. Veronica, we're going to start with you on this one. What are your thoughts on starting a preschool program within the school district? And if it's a yes, half day, full day?
I think that given our struggle for childcare, and having lived my daughter's preschool years in Wyoming, where she was able to attend a preschool that was partially funded by the state, that was a real blessing for us. It didn't, you know, make up for childcare, and we didn't need childcare at the time, but it really made a huge difference in her life. So I am all for preschool. I like the idea of the school having a preschool program simply because there are interventions that need to be made in children early on in life. There are issues or differences or places where children get behind, and as parents we may not be aware of it, or you ask your family or your friend or your physician and say, hey, is this normal? And you may hear, oh, well, it's something that they'll grow out of, or don't put too much weight in that, or you're just being an overprotective parent. Where we have experts in the school district that know where children should be academically and physically and socially, they can help see some of those cues early on and create interventions in them while they're young enough to make a very large impact in a very short amount of time. Half day or full day, that's a tough one. You know, I would really have to, I struggled all week since we kind of got some of the questions ahead of time to look up some information about whether full day was really possible for children that are 6 and under. And I think that's really going to depend on where we're headed as a country. So.
Thank you. Rob Keener.
Excuse me. I agree. I think preschool would be good. I think the district being involved would be a good thing just for communication between the two, like Veronica said. So again, everybody understands and is on the same page of where the kids need to be to prepare them for kindergarten and moving up as they progress. I also agree. I don't think it should, or really obviously designed to be a replacement for child care as much as it is as an environment to start preparing them for school. With that, I believe it should be a half day. I think at that age, I think the half day for what preschool should be designed for is plenty of time. and just kind of gets them ready for that full day step when they get to kindergarten.
Thank you. Amy?
Well, actually, it was brought to my attention when I was going over these questions. We have a preschool Head Start. You have to qualify to be in it. In theory, a preschool would be a great idea. I think it would be a draw to bring new staff in, younger staff that have kids that could go there. I think it opens a lot of questions. How's it going to be funded? Where is it going to be? How are we going to screen kids that get in? Liability. I think in theory it works. In theory, if it was up to me personally, I'd be like, yes, let's do all-day preschool. Let's give these kids, you know, everyone a head start. I think there's a lot of questions, though, surrounding that question that have to be answered before you can just say, yes, I agree with it, or no, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're back to you for number 4. What kinds of things do you think can be implemented to help Abilene schools get to the next level, and I presume up?
Yeah, hopefully the next level you're talking about is up. That's always a good place to go. As far as implementation, to be 100% honest, I don't really know what's out there that can be implemented yet as far as things schools are looking for. I think it's always a good idea to obviously be progressive and looking forward at what you can do. That's good for your staff and the kids. But at the same time, I'm also a believer that throwing, money or, fancy titled things at potential issues especially is necessarily what fixes it. And I've been part of different things where you implement, new equipment or new ideas. If you do that too often, no one ever gets comfortable. No one ever really understands what the implementation is about. And you don't always get a good reading on if it worked out or not. Some things do take time to see once it's implemented what the long-term effects are. So I think it's important to look at what we could possibly implement and what the long-term effects could be, and be willing to sit back and see if we're getting the desired results before we just, implement more projects and especially put more money at things.
Okay, thanks. Amy?
Well, I think every school in Abilene is a Title I school, which means we have 60% of our students are on free or reduced lunches. The problem I've seen from a kids in crisis standpoint is to be successful in school, you have to have an iPad. The school gives you an iPad, but it's $40 deposit. Kids in crisis can help you pay that. What we found, though, is if families have fees they haven't paid from previous years, the school won't give you that iPad, even if we give you the $40 for the deposit. I understand the reasoning. I understand some parents may not prioritize the iPads and the child's enrollment fees. That's not the child's fault. So you take a child from a family that's economically challenged and you say, guess what? You don't get to take your iPad home to do homework. You have to come in early or you have to stay after school. And then you have to hand your iPad in when all your friends are taking it home. So for me, that's like the #1 thing I would work on to improve. I hate to see any child at a disadvantage starting out. And technology is huge. I mean, it's everywhere. You're taking kids that are already at a disadvantage and you're saying, now we're not gonna let you take your iPad home because your parents didn't pay your enrollment fees. My oldest son, his best friend, great kid, came from a family that just didn't have the money or didn't prioritize, hadn't paid his fees for years. When he graduated, he couldn't get his diploma because his fees weren't paid. How do you get a job if you don't have a diploma to pay those fees? So fortunately, someone paid those fees for him, but it was a personal thing. And this person is now in law enforcement and very successful. But he had that little help. So I'm saying that's what I would change. Every kid needs to have the same opportunity.
Veronica?
Well, that is a great point. You know, as far as implementation of new programming, I think that our whole goal is to make sure that children are stepping foot out of 12th grade with their diploma in hand, ready to take care of themselves and be the type of person that's contributing something, whether they know it in their heart, whether it's out in the community, whether it's through work, whether that's through their family. I think that every child needs an opportunity to be the best person that they can be, and part of that is exposure. I would like to see our schools exposing children to more businesses, to more experiences. They have teachers, faculty, staff have so much on their plate. Teaching now, my dad was a teacher. Teaching today is not at all like it was 30 years ago. Teachers are tasked with things that they would have never imagined they'd be doing 30 years ago. Look at what happened in the high school in Oregon this week with the coach. My dad would have never thought that he would have ever had to do that. And luckily it turned out well, but I would just like to see our teachers getting a little more support in whatever we implement, that we're not bogging them down so that they're going home overly exhausted and have nothing left to give at home. So.
Thank you. Amy, you get the last question that's on the sheet. You ready?
I am ready.
What do you feel the implications are from the Supreme Court decision regarding public educational funding?
Well, I think we cannot fund public education enough, and I say that as my husband is a public educator, and my mother was, and so I think it's great. I think if we have to raise taxes for anything, education is what we need to do it for, because every other profession stems from education. I mean, even if you don't have kids, I have some good friends that they don't have kids, and who's going to take care of them though when they're older? You know, it's our youth now that we're educating. We have to give this foundation. We have to put money into our youth, into our teachers, so our teachers can be mentally healthy and feel supported so they can educate our youth. So personally, I am all for, I hate to say raise taxes, I hate higher taxes, but if we have to do it for anything, education and our youth, I think that's the best investment anyone can make.
Veronica.
I'm thankful for the Supreme Court's decision. I know that looking at the numbers, they were very tricky. You look at the numbers and you think, if we say we're funding children at X amount of dollars per day, that sounds like a lot of money, but when you figure in that that includes teachers' retirement plans and things of that nature, while yes, it directly impacts the student because the teacher is receiving benefits, and a teacher that has benefits is happier than a teacher that does not, the numbers could be a little tricky to interpret. So I'm glad that they have the funding that seems sufficient. I don't see any teachers rolling around in Jaguars in our parking lot, and kids aren't coming home with all kinds of neat trinkets. The money is being spent wisely. When I look at what's in our schools, we are just keeping up and leveling up every year with what's needed for them to be successful. iPads may seem crazy to people, especially like me, when I thought, I didn't have a computer until I was late in my 20s. Same thing with a cell phone, and my kindergartners using an iPad at school. It seemed a little wild, but that's what they need to succeed. Jobs are being done on the internet more and more these days, and we need to make sure that our schools have the funds to give them what they need to thrive.
Rob Keener.
I agree with Amy and Veronica. Obviously, funding is very important. You know, a big part of the state's budget goes to education for obvious reasons. Like Amy said, you know, we got to invest in our kids now because that's what everybody's future is, like it or not. So I think it's a good deal on their decision. I think it's good that there's going to be some oversight to make sure that there's follow through going on, that the money will continue to come. And like Veronica said, you know, the most important thing to it is make sure the money is getting spent productively, that it is benefiting the kids, and they're getting what they need to be successful and be ready to move on once they get out of school.
Okay, the rules of this forum said that I could only ask the questions that were written, so as a law enforcement officer, can you verify that I just wrote that on the bottom
There
of
are
the
no
paper?
more questions.
All right, very good. Thank you. So, Veronica, we're going to start with you. Who was your best teacher in school and why?
Oh, my best teacher that I ever had was Mrs. Carpenter. I was in 4th grade. I was 10 years old. And I really love one of my daughter's teachers that she had for 2nd and 3rd grade for the very same reasons. I went to school. It was a warm, friendly. I felt like I was going someplace where somebody loved me, and I learned a lot that year. And I was in a similar classroom to this teacher that my daughter had, where it was 2 grades that were mixed together. So the kids that were ready to move up were in my class, and I'm not ashamed to say I wasn't one of the kids that had moved up. I was the grade lower, but she never made any of the kids feel like they were lacking, and I just had so much love and compassion, and I don't remember a lot of my teachers before that. I do remember a lot of my teachers after that, but I remember loving school that year. I remember loving going to school and never wanting to skip, and always feeling like if I had something going on, she was going to be there as soon as I walked through the doors. So,
Thank you.
you're out there, Mrs. Carpenter.
Rob?
Well, I'm going to cheat a little bit and not use just one. One of my, fondest memories of a teacher was my 6th grade teacher, Mrs. Rabel. This is back in Derby. Very nice, very caring. My sister had her too, and I always thought it was neat, how she always remembered my sister when, we'd be at the school together or something like that too. So I remember, I have good memories of her. In high school, I had a math teacher, Mrs. Mize, that was always on me about getting my homework done, and like I said, pushing myself to do as good as I could, not just meet a minimum standard. And just the time that she took personally, in me and my success, I appreciate. The most influential, I would say, was my PE teacher, I guess, in high school. We had weight training. He was also a football coach. And it wasn't so much what he taught me in the classroom or anything like that, but what he taught me about being able to move on and ready for life too, which I think is very important in our education system, was that hard work will get you somewhere. And if you put yourself into what you're doing and do the best you can, that you'll succeed. And I've been around a lot of great people, learned a lot of things from a lot of great people my entire adult life. And but what my high school football coach taught me in those 4 years has got me to where I'm at. And I think that kind of ability for someone to influence our kids is a very special thing, and I think we need to make sure that's happening too.
Amy?
I had several really good teachers. Mrs. Webster was my 4th grade teacher, and we actually moved to Lubbock, Texas when I was in 4th grade. We moved back in 6th grade, but she had the whole class get together and they made me a photo album with their pictures, and they each drew me a picture and they wrote me a note. And it was really kind of neat because David Elliott, who's a plumber here in town, was at our house fixing our plumbing, and I pulled that out and I'm like, hey, you remember this picture and this letter you know, with the picture he drew me? And I gave it to him, and he's like, I can't believe you still have that. And so that was really a neat memory. She really made me feel special about having to move. And then in high school, I always remember Mrs. Haas. She always told me I did not live up to my potential. That was like a daily thing, and I think, I heard that from my mom at home, so it was just familiar. And so, but I just had a wonderful experience in Abilene. All the teachers, I always felt good, and then my kids, they always had really good experiences and good teachers. And so I have nothing but good to say about the Abilene school system.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have 2-minute closing. Start off with you, Mr. Rob Keener.
I don't really have much to finish with. I just appreciate the opportunity. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to serve on the school board and the challenges that are with it, and hope to do a lot of good things for our community and for our schools and our kids. Thank you.
Amy Meisenberg.
And I thank you for the opportunity also. This is a first for me to even be at a forum. It's the first time I've run for anything. Kids have a special place in my heart. I was school nurse at Solomon USD 393 for 3 years. I absolutely loved it. It was just the most rewarding job ever. Kids in Crisis has been wonderful to be a part of, and we are always looking for new volunteers if anyone ever wants to volunteer. And kids are kind of just where my heart is. I want to see them succeed. I don't want to see anyone be singled out because of lack of income or their parents just have different priorities. I'd like everyone to have the same opportunity, and I just look forward to serving.
Thank you. Veronica Murray.
You know, my daughter has been in Abilene school system since kindergarten, and I was fortunate and still fortunate to be able to be active in her education, whether that's volunteering at the school for reading programs when they were in kindergarten and first grade, or math for second and third grade, some of the middle school, after school programs, just being at the football games and serving hot dogs, being able to spend time with the faculty and the staff and getting to know some of the children and some of the current school board. And obviously you've heard it here tonight, there's a large group of people that are supporting our children, and I think that this new turnover of school board members will be nothing less than spectacular, and I appreciate the support.
Thank all three of you for standing for election, for coming tonight to the forum. We appreciate it. Good luck to all. Give them a hand, please. This is the final section of our local government forum tonight for the people who are running for the Abilene City Commission. We had just a conversation here from the audience. These questions were sent in to the chamber. They put them on a sheet, and I'm standing here reading them. I am trying to resist the urge to add a few. This may be where I give in. I'm tired, my back hurts, so you guys may get one.
Another question. How many openings are there?
Three. Okay, so here's how it goes. Candidates, you're going to have a minute to introduce yourself, and then I'll start on the questions. And since Phil's sitting next to me, I'll let him start.
My name is Phil Hamilton. I've lived here for 5 years with my wife, Joanne. We've lived in sort of destination towns. We really enjoy Abilene a lot. My background, destination towns, what I mean by that is I lived in Sarasota, Fort Lauderdale, Boulder, Colorado, places like that, and I really like Abilene a bunch. My background, I'm an architect. I'm into planning, the design focus, traditional neighborhood design. I've got tons of experience in drawing, designing, and illustrating the things that look exactly like Abilene does right now. So anyway, that's what I am and who I am. Thanks. Thanks for the opportunity, by the way.
Thank you, Phil. Dee Marshall.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm Dee Marshall. My husband and I moved to this community in 1977 by choice. It wasn't a transfer. We chose this town. We raised our children here. We have 3 grown children, 6 grandchildren, 4 of whom are pretty much grown. The other 2 are almost there. And the most beautiful great-grandson anyone ever had. I have a very strong financial background. I have a Bachelor's of Science with majors in Accounting and Business Administration, and I have a Master's of Business Administration with a concentration in finance. My husband and I ran a trucking company for 45 years. Of course, I did all the accounting for that. And I worked for the Department of Corrections, where I was the head of the business department, but my main responsibility was writing and administering a $29 million budget for one of my funds. I had 5 other funds that I had to do. I love this town and love helping people. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandon Ryan.
Yes, as he said, my name is Brandon Ryan. I am a native of Abilene. This is my hometown. It's my favorite place to ever be. So basically, I like to say that I was smart enough to only leave for 4 years. I made it 45 minutes away to K-State and then came right back. During that time away, I really realized what I was missing in Abilene, and I think it took me that opportunity to go away for a little bit to realize what exactly we have here and how special it is. I graduated from K-State with a degree in agricultural economics, which I like to call it a good old Kansas economics degree, basically. I just really want to give back to the community that gave me everything, that made me the person I am today. I have been so grateful for this town. And immediately right when I came back, my first goal was just to get involved and get active in the community through civic groups, member of the Abilene Rotary Club, treasurer of the Abilene Elks Club, and just try to get my hands on anything that people will let me. And I think it would be an honor and a privilege to serve this town. My hometown as an Abilene City Commissioner.
Thank you. Tim Schaefer.
Well, unlike Phil, I didn't live in many destination towns, but as a school administrator, the life of a school administrator is fairly itinerant. So I've lived in places that I'm sure you've all heard about, like Palco, Kansas, Broken Bow, Nebraska, not places that have palm trees. Moved here in 2010 as a school administrator. That ended in 13, and I retired at that point and just stayed in Abilene because this was the place that I wanted to be. Could have moved about anywhere, but chose to stay in Abilene. Took me a few years to kind of get my feet back on the ground, but after that, I decided, you know, this town has received me well, welcomed me here. Maybe I can give back. So I ran for the city commission. You know, the state legislature changed the election times, but it was in April when Dee and I ran the first time. And I was elected, and I feel like the city commission in the last four and a half years, we've had some swings and misses, but for the most part, we have done, I think, very well in setting forth a path for the city. We've dealt with various things, you know, and it wasn't us or it wasn't me, but it was a team effort of the community. But land pride expansion, we're working on 8th Street to get that done. The Holiday Inn Express Motel, those are some of the examples of things that the commission has done, and I'm proud to have been a part of that. So we'll see what the questions are and see where we go from here.
Thank you. Phil, you're going to get the first one, starting off. As a candidate for city commission, what are your priorities or concerns?
Well, my priority and my concern is the reason I'm running for city commission at all, and I guess has to do with I think that a town like Abilene, and this is based on those other experiences I saw, which I don't choose places because of the palm trees, but anyway, the town is, I think, vulnerable. Vulnerable because it's built out of historic stock that was, you know, created between whatever 1870 and 1920, and it's easy, like they said the carrier pigeons used to blacken the skies of Ohio, and now they're all gone. There are no carrier pigeons. Why? Because there were so many, so that it was open season on carrier pigeons, so they're all dead now. And I think the same thing can happen in a community where you take your natural assets for granted and you don't understand that they're there in the first place. You know, so I think that's one reason, coming from those other types of towns where they're constantly striving to create artificially the things that Abilene has right now. I think that it's a big deal. And I feel like it's vulnerable and that it's at risk. You know, when you go downtown, vacancies, You know, the conversation usually orients toward I-70, or what you'd call the edge city. You know, the edge city is a breakaway city, really, but from 14th Street to the interstate. And there's a tendency to think that's where all the possibilities are. And my own priority is the downtown area. I feel like it's the heart, the cultural, historical heart, and it should also be the economic heart. I know that there's a long way from that, but that's my priority and my main concern and why I'm running. So, thanks.
Thank you, Phil. D. Marshall.
Well, my priorities are a little bit different. I agree with the things he's saying, but I think we need to concentrate on a viable water supply for our city, make sure that we always have that. We have a stormwater drainage issue, which we need to continue to work on. Our northwest industrial area needs to be developed. We need to do things to draw people into that. And we need to take care of our citizens and maintain a safe environment for them and promote growth while remembering our citizens first.
Good.
Brandon.
One of my biggest things, or I guess my biggest priority, is hiring a competent city manager that understands Abilene. We have very unique advantages and disadvantages. So I think finding the right candidate for that would be one of my biggest priorities. We need to make sure that we don't make the same mistakes we've made in the recent past. Make sure that candidate is everything we need to ensure that they will work tirelessly to make us successful as a town. There are a lot of other, as both of them have talked about, a lot of other issues that are coming up, the stormwater drainage, bringing businesses into town to keep growing. Being stagnant as a small town is just as good as dying. So we need to keep working towards getting those businesses into town. And I think the Economic Development Corporation, or the Dickinson County Economic Development Group, is doing a great job at that. But getting a city manager as someone that's going to lead our charge, that is one of my biggest concerns right now.
Tim Schaefer.
To extend from my previous comments, the thing that attracted me to Abilene was the quality of life. Quality of life encompasses many things. So, stormwater drainage for the people in the southeastern quadrant of Abilene, that's a quality of life issue. People in the northwest that have stormwater drainage issues, that's a quality of life issue. To have a police force that is responsive to the needs and protects us and keep us safe, that's a quality of life issue for us all. So it's those kinds of things that the city does that, when put together, provides a quality of life for all of us that we seem to find attractive because we're all here, we're all interested. So we have various milestones that we have to address, but I put them all under the heading of quality of life. If we don't have a quality of life here, we might as well live somewhere else in Salina or somewhere else. But our quality of life here is what's attractive to us, and the City Commission develops and implements policies which then add to that and support that quality of life.
We're going to allow a minute for rebuttal, starting in the same order. If you have a minute, if you want to rebut or add. Phil?
Well, the water issue comes up a lot. I, of course, agree. I mean, the city has to function. You know, I mean, the quality of life, the people, health and safety, and all those kinds of things. And yet the town has a certain essence. And let's say water issues or certain kinds of financial issues can't lead the conversation about what a town is or what it should be. I know that from my own house, if I got quotes on my house, it's a matter of money and practical response. For all these practical issues, somebody's going to say, well, you should jack up your whole foundation and replace the whole thing. It's going to be $150,000. And somebody else is going to say, pile up dirt around the edge. And we're going to have, two radically different quotes. I think that's the detail issue that I like to be involved in, because I think sometimes we look at big dollars and consultants and when they're not necessary. So.
Thank you. D. Marshall, 1 minute.
I agree. This is, everything we do as commissioners is about the quality of life in Abilene and protecting our citizens. We have to take care of the citizens first. They're what make up this community. I like all of the pretty things that make downtown very nice, and that's wonderful. We have organizations that are working on that, and we support them in every way we possibly can. But our responsibility as commissioners is to make sure we take care of our citizens first.
Brandon, 1 minute.
I would agree with that as well. I think we do need to take care of our own first. And I think we need to really understand what the City Commission's role is. A lot of these beautification projects should not stem from the City Commission itself. There are private groups that are doing that. So I think the basic quality of life issues we should be looking at, but sometimes we get on different tangents, and I think we need to understand that that's not necessarily the City Commission's role.
1 minute, Mr. Schaefer.
I have nothing to add.
Okay, thank you. Dee, you'll start off the next question. What is your vision for Abilene's future?
I would like to see a viable downtown, something to attract the tourists that come through this town every weekend, all year long. The tourists are coming up and down, and they tend to just bypass downtown. We need to have businesses that cater to this segment of the population. Nice little artisan shops, green spaces, eateries, anything we can to trap that dollar into our community. I'd like to see reasonable growth. I'd like to see the Northwest Industrial Park take off in some way. Anything I can to help make this city better. I love this town. Let's keep it nice and friendly the way it's always been, and be responsible about it.
Brandon.
Simply, I just want my hometown to be the best place to grow up, live in, and raise a family in the state. I was very fortunate to grow up here, and I want those same opportunities that I was given as a young child and growing up through the public schools. I want to make sure that we retain those same functions in the city, and make sure that every kid has the exact same chance that I had growing up, because it truly was 1 in a million, and I feel very blessed to have grown up here.
Tim Schaefer, 1 minute.
Is it the vision for the commission or the vision for the city?
City.
What is your vision for Abilene's future?
Oh. Well, I would go back to quality of life. I'm going to beat this all night long. Quality of life is what keeps us here. What I think the people that move here, by and large, come here because of our quality of life. So we have to maintain, improve upon the things that we do in the commission that then enhance that. Certainly not detract from it in any way, but support it and enhance our quality of life, because that's what Abilene is.
Phil.
Dee said it extremely well. And in order to get to a vital vision for the downtown, it has to be prioritized. So the way to prioritize in terms of a vision, ask about what my vision is for the future. I would say that to vitalize the downtown as the heart of the city, in order to accomplish that, there has to be some sort of understanding of the edge city between 14th Street and the interstate. It has to be a conduit that takes people from the interstate into the city. Right now, it's acting as an insulator against the downtown. Eisenhower Center is not necessarily attracting people into the downtown. So these are concerns about the development of the downtown, so that you can eliminate some of the vacancies and make it attractive. And I have some specific, lots of pet projects that I would do in terms of gateway at the front, at the north end, gateway at the south end. I'll probably draw this stuff up, whether, you know, because I'm an artist, you know. I'll probably draw it up whether I got on the city commission or not. And some connecting greens that make the downtown more cohesive. I agree with all the functional aspects of the town, but the vitality, I think, will spill out and make those things more doable, more realistic, and more likely if you have vitality. You know, there's people living downtown, functioning, spending money downtown, and these aren't people that work in one of the warehouses or something like that. They're going to be people that come into town that don't need Abilene's money, like me. You know, I mean, I work on my own. I have clients elsewhere, and there's a lot of people like me. So that's, thank you.
We have 1 minute rebuttals available, same order that we took the question. So Dee, you have an opportunity at a 1 minute rebuttal.
I don't think I have anything to add to that, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Brandon?
I don't believe I do either.
Tim?
No, sir.
Phil?
No, I'm good with
Okay. Next question. This one goes to Brandon. What can Abilene do to help with the immediate need for more child care providers?
That's a very hot button issue right now. I think there's quite a few people in the room that have been dealing with that, whether it be on boards or through their own children needing to have child care. Having an econ background, if you increase demand, supply will come. I think that there will be more people that are opening up daycares in their homes. I know the state regulations are extremely burdensome. And I think that this actually gives some places in town that are already established, the ACLC, Abilene Child Care Learning Center, to expand. And I think they're actively looking at that. I think this could be with the hospital limiting learn and grow to a set amount of kids, or not a set amount, but to children that are with the hospital employees. I think that would be an avenue that would bring supply up, because there is such a need for it right now. If they would come to the commission and request help in finding a location, things like that, I think we could put them in contact with the correct people. I don't know that we, as a city, need to necessarily subsidize it or anything like that. I think that kind of opens up a can of worms, but basic economics, demand has increased exponentially recently. Supply is going to follow.
Tim Schaefer.
Talking about quality of life, child care. The city is not a barrier to child care. We were at a forum yesterday at the hitching post that was kind of intimated that the city was also a barrier, but the city has no dog in that fight. We don't regulate child care at all. So that aside, then, as Brandon said, what can we do without a financial commitment? It's a good question. We can encourage people. We belong to the Dickinson County Economic Development Corporation. I know that they're active in searching for this, so that's part of the City Commission's work in this area. So there is some movement going on. There, in the Reflector Chronicle today, there was a big article about it. So it's getting the attention it needs. But I don't know, as a city council, as a policy-making body, I don't know what we can do to loosen the regulations that we don't even have. I do support additional child care, but I think it's not in our wheelhouse at this time.
Thank you. Bill?
Child care, I don't know. I have to go back to what I would do if I needed child care at this point. It's extended family, it's through church, or it's through more intimate relationships in the community, sort of less formal. I mean, in terms of if I need an immediate answer, I can only answer from my own sort of, you know, autobiography. So, you know, I would have to do a lot of research to find out the institutional response or the regulatory problems or anything like that. I asked my brother, who is in the Planning Commission, I said, Tim, what would you do about child care? And he said, was it eliminate, what was it, conditional use permits, eliminate conditional use permit for facilities that handle under 10 children. And I got shot down yesterday for saying that. So I don't know, I'd have to study it. You know, I've never thought about child care in my whole life.
Dee.
I know the main problem around this right now is employee retention. Having owned a business, I know that's the biggest nemesis of all employers. If you find qualified people, they pass the background checks, they do the UAs, they do everything they're supposed to, you get them on board, you train them, they leave. The grass is always greener. If I had the answer to employee retention, I'd be a rich lady and I'd still be in business. That being said, we as a city are not culpable to do anything about it. It's not a function of ours, but like Tim said, through our work, our partnership with the Economic Development Council, we help that way. And because it is such a highly regulated field by the state, we can make sure that we offer conditional use permits to people that want to start home health daycare services in their homes.
Okay, 1 minute rebuttal in the same order that we started. Brandon?
I don't think I have anything to add.
Tim?
No.
Bill?
Nothing.
Dee?
No, I wish I had.
Rebuttals are not very popular tonight.
That's a tough one.
It is. Tim, you will take this question first. What do you believe is the city's role for incentives as they pertain to economic development?
The city certainly can be involved in that. I'm not in favor of any type of grant situation, but if we could have some kind of revolving fund where we set up an account with somebody to do an improvement, and then they pay that back over time, that then we could reloan out. You know, I've seen that operate in some areas. We do have currently in place a tax incentive, and the name of it escapes me right now, but where people in the downtown improvement district can get a lower tax rate if they make improvements on their property. So that's one thing that we've got going. But basically, I think the city can be supportive. We can be involved in planning. We have a very capable staff at the city offices that can assist in that area, give guidance. But I would not be in favor of any grant and aid in just a gift.
Thank you. Phil?
Well, my first thought on it is that the city itself ideally is the incentive. You know, I mean, and I think it is. The city itself is my incentive for being here. I like it. It's beautiful. The people are extremely friendly. And anything that enhances that basic, native, you know, attractiveness of the place, I think is the best incentive. Beyond that, in terms of taxes or breaks or new roads that you offer somebody, or, you know, whatever it is that you do, I think that there should be some conversation about what is going to be returned to the town to, again, enforce and amplify what the city understands as its natural attractiveness, or its natural, you know, as the city as an incentive. In other words, whoever you help out, there should be an in-kind aid or amplification of the quality of life in the city, and it shouldn't just be a giveaway for 10 years, let's say. That's.
Dee.
Well, we have a wonderful CVB director who does a fantastic job of promoting Abilene and getting us out there and getting people here. It's our duty to work with the businesses that want to come here and make sure that we do offer the appropriate incentives. I'll try to remember some. I've jotted them down because we do have ad valorem and property tax abatement. We have neighborhood revitalization, tax refunds. We have industrial revenue bonds. We have all sorts of incentive in place to bringing businesses to Abilene. We need to get them here. And I think with the work of the CVB, the advertisement they're doing, letting them know what Abilene has to offer, this is going to help us a great deal in drawing interest into our city. Thank you.
Brandon.
I think that these tax incentives can, in some very certain situations, be helpful, but I don't think that anyone that comes to the table, we should just throw this at them. We have to be very careful in making sure that we don't get burned, and that we spend these taxpayer dollars to bring companies in. Sign of first thing going wrong, they head for the hills. You know, businesses that have no loyalty to our town. We just have to be very careful about that. And we also need to make sure anything that we are giving these incentives to, we're going to get a positive return on investment, ROI. We can't be losing money like that. As Dee had said, we have CVB that does a great job. We have the Chamber that does an excellent job of promoting business. Dickinson County Economic Development Council, again, they do a great job of that. I think we have enough things built in that these tax incentives definitely should not be our first thing to bring to the table.
Have an opportunity for 1 minute rebuttals. Tim?
Yes. Thank you for mentioning the Chamber of Commerce and Dickinson County Economic Development in addition to, Dee said, the CVB. But there was a comment made about a giveaway for 10 years. When we make the investment, there's no cash investment on our part, but when we approve like the IRB or these ad valorem tax abatements, we have a study done to see what the return will be to Abilene. And I think the rule of thumb is $1.2 for every dollar that we put in. Return. Does that sound right?
That's our minimum.
And for example, on the Holiday Inn Express, it came back, I think it was 1.53. So that was a very good investment on the front end. Well, what actually happens remains to be seen. But we don't just grant these 10-year abatements willy-nilly. There's quite a bit of study that goes into those abatements.
1 minute rebuttal. Phil?
Well, again, with all those things, I'd say my general, opinion or attitude is, let's say you're sitting in a room, you point your feet are either pointed into the room or they're pointed out of the room towards the door. And you can't convince anybody that you're committed to being in the room if your feet are pointed toward the door. And what I'm saying is that in terms of the downtown or the vital center, I really don't have any answers about the economics of stuff. I'm a designer, I'm an artist, I'm all this kind of stuff. I've been around these things, but to me, the proof of concept is that strong fiscal, linear thinking about taxes and incentives and all that kind of stuff hasn't led to much vitality downtown. There's some issues down there. And so that would be my, I don't know if that's a rebuttable or just a comment.
Dee Marshall, 1 minute.
Well, I want to thank Tim for pointing out the incentives and the rigorous study that goes into giving incentives. We try to, they're appropriate. We have people that come that want everything, and we sit and we go over what we feel is reasonable. Tim may have a different idea than me. We have some really long, hard discussions about this. It's not just giving away the bank. And I disagree that downtown's the only area that we need to take care of. We need to take care of the entire city.
Brandon.
I just want to reiterate that the fact that the return on investment, had been discussed, 1.2 is the minimum. That is the most important thing to me to look at from a numbers guy or numbers perspective, making sure that we are going to come out whole in these tax abatements, and just making sure we are making a good investment of all of our taxpayer dollars.
Phil, this is your question again. You're up again. What are your thoughts about developing infrastructure now to allow companies to come into the industrial park in the northwest part of Abilene? Do you feel we need to be poised to react quickly in that area?
Well, my own reaction to the reaction is to not be reactive. No, I wouldn't necessarily want to get ready for something to happen. And the first thought, again, that comes into my head is, why would it be in that area? Is there any thought or any attitude or concern about developing infrastructure, let's say downtown, to attract residents downtown or other kinds of businesses downtown? Just as a thought. I'm not saying we should do it. I don't want to turn my back on the whole city or anything like that. I want to ignore everything for the downtown. For me, it's a balancing act. You know, I mean, it's like there's a tendency to look at, you know, the downtown, the industrial park, and all this without a thought of generating those kinds of forward thoughts or forward plans within the natural endowment that the city has, instead of developing new stuff. So,
Dee.
Good question. I don't think we need to have a knee-jerk reaction and go out there and start laying lines and things like that. Plans have been in the works for a long time, but we need to progress as things occur. We can't just go out there and spend thousands and thousands of citizens' dollars and then not have anybody come in.
Brandon?
Yes, I would also caution against investing large amounts of taxpayer dollars with simple hopes that if we're ready, businesses are going to come. That's not necessarily the case all the time, and that can really put us in a financial hurt. I think we need to be ready and have at least be on the same page as a city and a commission, so we can move forward with these if a company does come in and express interest. But no, I don't think we should spend large amounts of money just to be ready in case that would possibly, maybe not, ever happen in the future.
Tim Schaefer.
There was a big hubbub a while ago about a company called Bradford coming to town. And they announced they were coming to town. There's a big press conference down at the Civic Center. And that was virtually the first time the city heard about it. Yeah. And they needed roads, and they needed water, and they needed sewer. And they needed it by, I think it was Christmas or something like that. We had no idea how much it was going to cost, where the road was going to be. We had no engineering, we had nothing. Well, then that passed. So I think what I would like to see is some kind of engineering, preliminary engineering to kind of plat the place out so that we have some idea of what things will cost, where roads will go, where water lines and sewer lines will go. So that if somebody does come in and express some interest, we're not caught flat-footed like we were with Bradford. That would require some initial investment, but it wouldn't be, in a construction term, it wouldn't be bricks and mortar. It wouldn't be paved roads, it wouldn't be water lines, but at least we would have an idea of where those things would go if the opportunity arose.
1 minute rebuttals. Phil?
I sort of heaved a sigh of relief actually when the Bradford thing went away. I mean, just as somebody who reads the paper and you know, I was not that active in the whole thing. I learned from personal experience, and it might not apply to the big picture, I recognize that, but personally, every time I've, you know, either tried to be reactive to someone or even think ahead, you know, make plans too much in advance in anticipation of something that may or may not be there, it hasn't gone well. It's been a wasted effort. It hasn't worked out well. And if somebody is in such a rush to get something accomplished, then, you know, they're suspect to me. You know, they either want to be here or they don't. That's kind of like what I think about it.
Dee.
I appreciate what Tim said. That's what I mean about we need to be prepared. No knee-jerk reaction. Just know what's going to happen. Like you said, we knew long after everybody else did about Bradford and what they wanted from the city. Be prepared, but don't be knee-jerk reaction to it.
Brandon?
And I just want to basically, it's not really a rebuttal, but I just want to clarify when I say I want us to all be on the same page. That is precisely what I mean. Have options, don't invest the large sums of money in actually putting the infrastructure there, but be ready for when that happens. That way it is not something that we have not even remotely prepared for.
Tim?
The namesake of this complex here once said, plans are useless. Planning is essential. And that's what I think we need to do with, everything we do, and specifically on this topic, the Northwest Corridor.
We normally drop the mic anytime Eisenhower's mentioned out here, but it's hooked to the board here. I really can't do that. Okay, Dee, you're up on this first on this next question. What can the City Commission do to encourage more people to move to Abilene so that we have the workforce needed to bring businesses to town and allow existing businesses to expand?
One of our immediate needs is moderate income housing. We talk about low income housing all the time. We have this huge Lamprey expansion going on. These are skilled workers. They're past, they may not even qualify for low income housing. They don't want a duplex. People want a single family home when they're at that income level. We need very nice, moderate income rentals that they can live in while they're saving up that down payment for their own home to achieve that American dream. We have to concentrate on taking care of that segment of society so we can get people in here. Part of being in a community is having a place to live and hopefully a place of your own.
Brandon?
I think I'm probably going to beat the dead horse just on quality, like Tim is on quality of life, but in my case, economics. If you increase the supply of workers, demand does not necessarily follow. I just think the entire question is philosophically wrong. Anyway, I think there are things that we can do, as Dee mentioned, with moderate income housing. There's such a large gap. We've got these houses that are $60,000 less dollars, and then we've got houses that are $300,000-$400,000 and up. There's not a whole lot in the middle.
Liebold mansions for sale.
It is.
My husband won't let me buy it.
I could get you a very good deal on that, let me assure you. I think that is a big issue. Making sure quality of life is good to where people want to come. We have so much built up around us. Look where we're sitting. Next to us, we've got Old Abilene Town, the end of the Chisholm Trail. Across the road, we've got the Greyhound Hall of Fame, and then down on Old 40, we've got the National Greyhound Association. We have so many of these things built in to draw people, and I think that will work out for us.
Tim?
Well, Dee started out on this, but affordable housing. You can't buy a house on $20 an hour. There's not a house probably available in Abilene for somebody making $20 an hour. So, I'm sorry? Oh, okay. So, therein is the problem in my mind. Now, we are not the employers, so we don't control wages, and we don't build homes, so we don't control the price of those. But somewhere in there, there's got to be an answer about affordable housing. Now, quality of life, obviously a big issue for me, but we don't have any multi-unit apartment complexes. Young 20-somethings, they would live in an apartment. But we don't have one. We have little units here and there, but we don't have any apartment complexes. That might be a place to start. But affordable housing. That's it. And right now, it's an economic impossibility. And I don't have the answer for it.
Phil Hamilton.
Well, I think that the city commission is a kind of a, in a sense, it's a kind of a dangerous term, I guess, leadership body. I talked with the former city manager about leadership, and he intimated to me that the leadership left when Alco left. And so what the city commission can do in terms of leadership, I think, is to try to understand the nature of the city. It tends to want to be something. You know, it tends to want to go in a certain direction. That's the way I look at it. It's you know, to me, okay, and I've been here 5 years, I think that it's a case can be made that it's essentially, at this point anyway, a tourist town. You know, people come here for this place, or they come here for something that's because it's historical and there's some houses and it's a really, really nice place to visit. It's a nice place to live. So the tourist town aspect. So that being said, and to solve the impossibility of not getting a down, you know, who's going to get a down payment of X for even a cheap house? You know, I mean, you know, that whole thing it seems unsolvable, which is why I think that as a city commission, I would like to form better relationships with the real estate agents, you know, liaisons with different groups that are in town that reach out to other people, and try to develop interest in Abilene from really out of the state. You know, there's all kinds it sounds crazy, maybe, I don't know, but there are people in Denver, there's people all over the country that would absolutely love to live in Abilene, and they don't have to have a job here. And they would help to provide income, they'd bring money from elsewhere, and it would start to give some relief and a sense of vitality. I know that doesn't solve all the problems, but that would be my thing, is to create liaisons and also talk with the real estate agents about trying to get Abilene out there as beyond just, you know, Ike's hometown.
We have time for 1 minute rebuttals on that same question. Dee?
Well, I certainly would want the workers to live in Abilene, and I don't like seeing them go home to Junction City or Salina. And like Tim said, we need apartment houses for certain segments of the community. We need moderate income housing for other segments. We need to face the housing issue in this community. There's a lot of homes out there, but a lot of them are not nice enough to live in.
Brandon.
Just to add a little bit, just making sure that Abilene has the necessary amenities, the basics, and I think we do now, to ensure that people, even if they are coming from Salina or Junction City, they would think about moving here if they are working here. It doesn't necessarily have to come right away, but I think as they move into a town like Abilene and they see what all we have to offer and how friendly the people are, and you know, everyone's waving at you, everyone's coming over to say hi, I think that speaks volumes for our town, and I think once they get into this community, they will see that.
Tim?
I don't need to add anything.
Your last, Phil? You have a 1 minute rebuttal. You're the tail end here.
No, I don't have anything.
Okay, all right. Brandon, you get the next question. What is your position on the preservation of the built history, and I interpret that as the historic structures, in Abilene? What is your vision for the future of Abilene's built history, and what do you feel needs to be done or can be done to help the owners of the structures in their preservation efforts?
Well, I think in a town like this, it's absolutely detrimental in preserving our built history. We have so many things around us that we're blessed to have here. I think from a city commission role, without getting into being historical preservationists, going down that rabbit hole, I think the biggest thing the city can do is assisting homeowners that own these or are looking to purchase these historic homes and buildings, assisting them in going through the process of getting tax credits for the work that they do that will greatly lessen the financial burden. And I think that in itself will help keep these historic buildings preserved. Like I said, from a city commission standpoint, it's a little difficult to take on something that is not necessarily in our wheelhouse. but I would definitely want to be able to point them towards someone that can help them with the tax credits available.
Tim?
Certainly, I think we need to preserve these historic, these historic properties. As Brandon mentioned, we have tax incentives for people who need help in renovating or improving on these. We have a branch of the city government, the Heritage Commission, that is involved in this. So I don't think we're ignoring it at all. I think we are approaching it in a forthright manner. The opposite of preservation of the historic districts is blight. And we are, as a commission, it's been on the radar for as long as Dee and I've been on the commission anyway, to address the blighted properties, which probably detracts as much, if not more, as maybe not a highly maintained historic building. But we are, again, we've addressed that over the 4.5 years that we've been on the commission, and we're trying to make Abilene look nice so it enhances altogether now quality of life.
Phil?
The aspect of, let's say, preservation, I guess when I read the questions, I got to that one and I thought, well, it's kind of interesting that it's, for me, it illustrates that the city actually views preservation as separate from the essential nature of the city itself, as though there's some option there. Or, you know, tax incentives are good. I'm on the Heritage Commission, and I'm learning actually about, you know, the incentives that people would have to preserve their property and that kind of thing. But I guess mine, the term is paradigm shift. I don't know if you're familiar with the term paradigm, but it's a whole different way of viewing a situation. It's a completely different, as a, you know, round earth versus flat earth. And to me, there has to be a change of paradigm in terms of, instead of saying, well, these properties are going down, when is the money going to come to get it, is for the city to recognize that it is the city. The condition of the properties is, in fact, an indicator of the vitality of the whole town itself. And if that goes down to a great extent, you know, I mean, it's an attitude. I'm not saying that it's going to generate money, but I do think that attitudes can change the general, as Abilene Forward has done. I think it's been fantastic. Abilene Forward made a radical difference. And Jane Foltz, I think, has been fantastic as a city manager, interim. I don't know how long she wants to stay or whatever, but the whole city has developed a lot of heat around these kinds of issues that it didn't have before. And it's really, really nice. So I think that of course you got to preserve it, but I think that the main step is to get that shift in attitude or the paradigm so that you see the city as what you're looking at. What you see is what you get, you know, and to commit across the board to taking care of it, whether it's, you know, painting your porch or doing this or that. And it would be up to the city commission to provide simple tools for people to do a lot of that stuff themselves.
Dee.
When I read this, I thought more about our historical buildings downtown and what we have to offer there. If we want to draw people down there, we need to take care of it. And I know that it's not a function of government. We can't go in and start fixing up somebody else's buildings. But we have organizations in this community that are doing just that. We have the Community Foundation of Abilene working with the Dickinson County Economic Development Corporation in setting up loans for businesses to take care of their storefronts and sidewalks, that sort of thing. We have the North Central Planning Commission now for signage. There's also the Heritage Commission, which would help guide downtown business owners to the appropriate state agencies for state incentives. We need to preserve downtown as much as we do our historic neighborhoods.
1 minute rebuttals, starting with Brandon.
I just kind of want to reiterate that I don't believe it's a city commission's role, or the city commission's role or job to preserve history. I think we have extremely good groups that are a part of the city that do that function and that help people get to the resources and the things they need to do that. I just simply don't think it's the city commission's role to take on those efforts.
Tim?
Well said.
Yes.
Phil?
And I had this conversation with a former city manager as well. I had a long speech with him, and he showed me how a vision is determined for Abilene. You know, and he drew these groups, and he has drawn this thing many, many times. And I said, you know, there's one thing you're missing, which is the vision in the center of the thing that informs all of the decision-making of all these groups. I can't see in Abilene, other than some combination of ears and brains in the city commission and liaisons of different groups with communication, but it seems to orbit around the city commission to develop and understand a vision and a direction for Abilene. And that if we lay our hands off of that and watch it, I feel certain that the city will just get a chance to wring its hands and watch it slide, unless they're saved by someone coming in and doing something. You know, it's like it has to be determined, yes, this is our city, this is what we're going to do, we're going to take the microscopic steps we can, and we're going to orient ourselves towards the larger steps that we can in order to save, preserve, and enhance this place that's really, really beautiful and wonderful by any standard. Thank you.
D.
I think it becomes the responsibility of the city by having our boards in place, making sure that we keep them revitalized with the proper leadership and board members. It's their function to take care of things like that for us, so we can do the day-to-day toiling of policy and the intricate things that have to be taken care of, and let them do the fun work.
Okay, Tim, you're going to start this question. We've seen sales tax receipts come up. What does that mean for property taxes in the future of Abilene?
With the exception of last year with the library board, went up 1 mil. I can't remember a tax increase that we've paid, that we voted for.
Sales tax receipts.
Yeah, I know, but you said, what effect does it have on taxes?
Property.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, I'm talking about property taxes, with the exception of the library board asking for a 1 mil increase a year ago, I can't remember, maybe we did, but I don't think we've had a tax increase on our property taxes in the last several years. I could be wrong, but we didn't this year, and we didn't last year.
Less than 1 mil the first year.
With the exception, did we go 1 mil the first year?
Less than a mil.
So the property taxes is not really an issue. Marcus back there is our city financial director, does very well, and Jane in crafting the budgets that we then ponder and look over and review and approve. But the taxes on the city side have not gone up. I know the school board's gone, well, they went up and then they went down, but the county has gone up every year. But we've not done that. Now, one thing that's out there, though, is that Highlands out there, our payment on that is $283, somewhere in that neighborhood, which works out to about 4 to 5 mils of our property taxes is just paying for, as Tim Horan said, that stagnant piece of ground out there. We're trying to deal with that. If we can get that moved out into some kind of, off our books onto somebody else's, boy, then we can talk about maybe really some property tax savings.
Phil Hamilton.
Well, that's really out of my league there, talking about those things. However, I do think that the taxes and property taxes and sales receipts and what happens that drives sort of like the cost of living in Abilene in those kinds of ways, I think is it's a touchy issue to me, because whenever you improve something, you know, you drive the price up. Some of the charm and wonder of Abilene is that it's, you know, I mean this in the best possible way. It's kind of folksy. And I think it's fantastic. And I think that those things, even though, you know, from our angle, from our small perspective, we can make decisions or try to drive towards a certain vision or a future to where certain things happen, and it could change the actual structure of who can live here, how they live here, in not necessarily beneficial ways. And I don't know it. I'd have to see a cost-benefit analysis of bringing in companies or developing things, or what it has to do with sales receipts. I really, really don't know. But I think it's somewhere in there, there's a concern that I have about Abilene developing, you know, in a certain financial way, and how that affects what the town really is, which is quite nice the way it is. So I like the grassroots approaches to almost everything to avoid major unpredictable changes that we really don't like. It happens all the time.
D.
Would you repeat the question so I know you
Sure.
asked what I think you did?
We've seen sales tax receipts go up. What does that mean in property taxes for the city of Abilene in the future?
Well, first we have to analyze why the property tax went up. We've seen in the past where we've had quarters where they've jumped up and we don't know why, and sometimes it's just a fluke. It could be right now because of the increased sales tax we're getting off 24/7 and things like that. But for property taxes, the particular commission we're sitting on right now, we have really fought hard never to increase property taxes, and we don't anticipate, at least I don't, where increased sales tax would necessarily drive up property taxes. It should help stabilize them, if anything else.
Brandon?
Well, I first just wanted to thank both of them for working diligently not to, or to ensure that our property taxes are not increasing. That's fantastic. And if I'm elected, I certainly hope to do the same. Sales tax increasing, I think that's one of the big things we can focus on. We've had businesses move into town, you know, with 24/7, as Dee had said. That helps tremendously. I think this new Holiday Inn project is going to help tremendously getting tax dollars, sales tax dollars into town. And those are great because those are tax dollars that are made from people visiting, made from people traveling on interstate, just stopping for a Subway sandwich or getting fuel. It doesn't hurt the people that actually live in this town. As Tim said, with the Highland Edition, once we get that off of our books and we stop having to fund that, the interest on the payments and all that, and if we can keep working to increase our sales taxes, I would love more than anything to lower property taxes.
Increase the sales tax base.
Sales tax base, yes. I would love more than anything to make sure that this community is at a proper tax level, and that we talk about bringing people into Abilene. That's going to help making this even more, or making this an affordable place to live compared to living in Chapman, living in Solomon, living in anywhere. That can be something we can focus on to drop cost of living and get people to come here.
1 minute rebuttal, starting with Mr. Schaefer.
Nothing.
Mr. Hamilton.
Let's see. No, I guess I don't have anything.
D. Marshall.
No, I think we've said it.
Brandon?
I think I'm all talked out.
Okay. Last question, starting with Phil. What do you want in a city manager?
What do I want in a city manager? Well, I think that absolutely the most wonderful aspect of a city manager that I've come to appreciate in Jane Foltz is that she listens. She doesn't feel like she knows necessarily what to do. I mean, the sense of when she came in, you know, there was a sense of like, well, you know, she's not really, let's say, qualified for that job. I think it's been great. And I think sometimes, and that relates to other issues, but I think listening is fantastic, especially in the city. I mean, it's not a humongous metropolitan area or something. It's under 7,000 people or whatever. So, so I'd say listening is primo, and then being able to work. I mean, obviously the work ethic, but also knowing the community is great, and then listening to people and not assuming that she has a strong agenda to push in a certain direction, I think is really, really nice. I've enjoyed, not very much, but I've enjoyed working with Jane and seeing her work and enjoying the feeling that the town has versus, you know, what it had in the recent past.
Dee Marshall.
Well, I certainly want someone that knows the community as well as Jane does. I value her work ethic, her honesty, her being there for citizens and commissioners. I really appreciate her for the way she takes care of our staff and treats them. We have wonderful staff, and I think she's been a good boss. Everything I've heard about from the employees, and I do talk to them, they're all satisfied, and those are the kind of qualities I want. Someone that's honest, listens, fair, consistent. That's what we need for our city.
Brandon.
I kind of discussed this a little bit earlier because it was one of my priorities on the for the commission. Once again, having someone, bringing someone in, or if that person is already here in our city, someone that appreciates our unique history, the unique qualities we have to offer is imperative to being a good city manager in Abilene. I think we need someone that appreciates that and understands that. And I think we need someone that will simply promote responsible growth. We won't try to tackle issues, items, things that we simply cannot do right away or we cannot afford currently. Responsible growth, that's what we need.
Tim Schaefer.
Somebody with a passion for Abilene. Someone with integrity. Someone who can work with the commission that might have 5 different opinions about the same fact. Someone who communicates well, and someone who has respect for others.
Should I even offer 1-minute rebuttals?
Yeah, I would like to.
Okay.
I would actually like to say just one little thing, just to make it really, really clear. There's a tendency to think that you need to hire somebody, and I said this in the paper they asked that question, that somebody has to be hired, somebody with qualifications, somebody that comes with some pedigree or whatever. And I don't know that that's, I think that might be a distortion of reality depending on what the community is and what the needs of the community are. So that's the main thing, is to not, you know, because to answer all those things, to have all those virtues, I think you almost, I don't know if you can hire somebody from out yonder, you know, a carpetbagger, you know. I don't think you can bring them in and have all those virtues. You might, but for sure you can test the people that you already have, groom them, train them, convince them, give them a pay increase. Anyway, that's my rebuttal.
Thank you. Dee?
No.
Brandon?
I don't have anything either.
Tim?
Nope.
Okay, that's the end of the questions. So we're down to a 2-minute closing. We'll start at the other end of the table. Mr. Schaefer.
Well, as you know, quality of life is very important to me. Maybe you've heard that somewhere before, but that's what I'm passionate about, my community, Abilene. And every time we go into a city commission meeting or a study session, I'm looking at the quality of life for the people who live in Abilene. I've enjoyed my past 4.5 years, and if given the opportunity, I'll work as diligently as I did before.
Brandon.
Well, Abilene is my hometown. I'm a native of this town. I love this town. I grew up in this town. I don't know what else I can say about my love for this town. It simply drew me back. There was never a question after I had left that I was going to be returning. And I think that I can help offer a more youthful point of view on the city commission. Not that age is anything bad, but I think there are some different points of view that maybe I notice that other people will not. And I would love to be that and be a voice of reason on the city commission. Look at the numbers, not get bogged down in so much emotion. to make sure that this place is as great as it was when I grew up for the next 100, 200 years.
Dee Marshall.
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank the Eisenhower Center for letting us be here, Chamber for putting it on, Dennis, your time for doing this. But my passion is this community. I am a numbers person. I like being responsible with your money and my money and making sure that we're taking care of things we need to. We have limited resources, the critical things that have to be done. I'm like Tim, I care about the quality of life here. I wouldn't be here. I enjoy serving the community. I told everybody yesterday, I'm open, I'm accessible. I've been called and patted on the back. I've been called and yelled at, and that's okay. I don't know what citizens want if they don't speak to me. I want to hear from you, so, and I have really had the honor of serving you for the last 4.5 years, and I'd like to continue to do that honor.
Bill Hamilton.
I think between like 1987 and I don't even know what year, maybe 2000 something, I drove back and forth from Colorado or somewhere else to Tennessee through Kansas, and I stopped in all these towns like Russell or Russellville or Hayes and all these places. Every single place I ever stopped, I know it was just gas stops and rest stops and restaurants and things. Kansas people, I'm just here to say it, were the friendliest people in the whole country. I'm not making that up. So I'm very grateful for being here, and even now in Abilene, I know people, can talk to people, have friends here like I've not had anywhere else, regardless of what those communities were. I sincerely appreciate that and love that about this place. And so, and I'll continue whether I, sort of got elected to, city commissioner or not. I'm going to continue to do things in every, dimension that I can. I have a lot of pet projects that I want to work on. So anyway, I guess my main thing is thank you for this opportunity to be here and talk, for listening to me. You don't know how I'm grateful for people that listen to me. So thank you very much.
We are grateful to all of you for showing up tonight to represent your views. City Commission is an important body of the beloved city of Dwight David Eisenhower, Abilene. We thank you all for coming tonight. We know that your time has been invested in your community out there simply by sitting and listening, so I thank you for coming. Dennis Weiss, good night.